Oh hey, welcome back to my channel. Listen, I'm gonna level with you guys. I know that you don't want to be here. I don't want to be here either, okay? But as I mentioned in my Obi Wan Kenobi trailer reaction video, I took an oath to be an attorney in the state of Ohio, and part of that oath was me promising that I would make videos talking about all the stupid shit that Disney releases in the Star Wars franchise, and that I would be analyzing it and, talking about it in excessive detail. I have to do that to keep my license to be an attorney, so I kind of don't have any other options other than to make this video, okay? I also felt like I talked so much shit about Star Wars and about the Obi Wan Kenobi series in particular. At this point, I kind of have to just revisit this and talk about whether there were things that I said that were right or not right, and just develop a little bit of closure for the situation, have everything come full circle so that I can just get it all out there, put it to rest, and then never talk about it ever again. If you haven't seen my title for the video and you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, today we are going to be analyzing and reviewing and discussing the Obi Wan Kenobi limited series that just wrapped up on Disney Plus a couple weeks ago. I'm going to be honest with you guys, this was a bit of a difficult one to write for me. I'd actually been trying to develop a script for this even before the finale was released. I had been making notes already and observations about things I liked and didn't like ever since the finale aired, and in the 2 or 3 weeks since then, basically up until yesterday when I recorded the rest of this video, I have been struggling to write this fucking script. It's been very difficult for me to kind of formulate my opinions on what I think about things, organizing it in a way where I don't sound like a fucking lunatic. It's just been a lot, and if this video seems a little bit all over the place, I sincerely apologize, but my brain has basically turned into mush from all of the things that Disney is forcing me to watch, so I understand, but we're just going to try to get through it together. So yeah, that's just what we're going to be doing today. So let's just do that, shall we? Let's just get a couple ground rules out of the way before we get started, just so that everyone is crystal fucking clear on where I'm coming from when talking about this television series, okay? Number one, I'm just not mentally at a place where I can go through all of my feelings on the Star Wars franchise and on this particular television series again, where I say that I'm just going to talk about it for 5 minutes and then I end up talking about it for 30, and then I have to edit all of that shit down into the beginning of the video. I don't know if you've ever had to edit your annoying ass voice talking about the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and then you feel like you're in the 7th realm of hell or something. If you would like to know my exact thoughts and feelings on the Star Wars franchise, as well as my initial impressions for what I expected from the Obi-Wan series, you can watch my Obi Wan Kenobi trailer video. It'll perfectly summarize, and then some, all of my thoughts and feelings on Star Wars at this point. Number two, I'm going to be organizing this video and my analysis of this television series in a very specific way. I've broken down my analysis into 5 categories that I believe are important when discussing any television show or film, not just Star Wars. Number one, the plot, talking about story, the writing, how sequences of events transcend from one to the other. Does everything make sense? Are things happening for no apparent reason whatsoever? Number two, the characters. So we're not just talking about the characters in and of themselves, but how they interact with the rest of the story, with other characters, whether they're important and well developed, and also acting performances, because I feel like that delivers a lot to the overall enjoyment of someone in a particular role. Third category, we're going to be talking about themes, overall messages and meanings that you can ascertain from this television series and all that other shit you learned in your English class. Number 4 is a category I'm going to call film mechanics. So basically anything that goes into the post-production of taking the high-level concepts of your story and making it a reality. Stunts, editing, set design, special effects, CGI, score, things like that kind of add the finishing touches onto the overall story. And the 5th category we're going to be talking about is what I'm going to be calling continuity in Star Wars canon. Now, if you know anything about the Obi-Wan series and you've heard anything about it online, by far the most controversial aspect of this television show is the way that this show deals with Star Wars continuity and the overall film canon as a whole. I was wondering when you'd come say hello. Did you like the Star Wars series? I would definitely be remiss if I didn't talk about it, because I do have a lot to say myself, and I feel like there is a lot of discussion and analysis that could go into that particular topic. But there's also a lot of things that are worth mentioning and talking about, both good and bad, about the Obi-Wan series that have nothing to do with the continuity issues. And I wanted to separate these out into different categories because I didn't want the issues of continuity and discrepancies and things like that to override all of the other things that are worth mentioning that have nothing to do with it. For the purposes of the first 4 categories, I'm going to put the show into a bit of a vacuum game, so to speak, and just look at it within the confines of those 6 episodes and talk about my first 4 categories in that way. That doesn't mean I'm gonna fucking pretend like I don't know who Darth Vader is or something. I just want to focus on those things and give them their moment, talk about what was good and not good about them before getting into this larger discussion about continuity, because I feel like it's only fair. The third and last thing I want to mention really quick before we get started is that I understand there are certain things about this television show, both with the characters and the plot, that relate to things or that were borrowed, so to speak, from the animated television series. And while I have a very superficial knowledge of the very basic plot points and overall concept of some of those stories, I haven't seen those shows, so I don't fucking know that much about them, and I can't speak comfortably about any of it. So if I say something that I like or dislike about like a character from the Inquisition or a story plot point that is contradictory to something that was in the animated series, I didn't see it, so I can't really fucking speak on it. Star Wars has also kind of been really wishy-washy about whether or not that's actually canon or not. I'm just gonna talk about the things that I know. That was a lot. Let's just get into this. I've been trying to figure out the right words to describe this show, and all I can think of at the end of the day is, this is a really strange fucking show. It's really weird. Surprisingly, the character arcs in this series were far stronger and more impactful than I could have ever predicted, which was a welcome surprise, but there were also issues with pacing and just generally how the sequences of events transpired that really bothered me. Ultimately, the biggest topic of discussion, like I said, surrounding this series was the continuity issues and how everything fits into the Star Wars canon. There's been a lot of impassioned Star Wars fans online yelling at one another about this particular topic. All I will say right now is there are a lot of things that directly challenge what we've seen before in this universe, and the script does a better job at addressing certain continuity issues with certain aspects of the story than others. But yeah, this story is really strange, and I really don't know if I like it or not. I guess there's no better way to figure this shit out than to talk about it in a video or in therapy. I'll try the video thing first and see where this goes. The general concept for the series is actually surprisingly simple. The Obi Wan series, in essence, is a cross between a Jedi witch hunt and a classic action-adventure rescue mission. That's it. That's really all there is to it. We start out with Obi Wan in hiding 10 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith on Tatooine, and he's been laying low as he watches over Luke and his aunt and uncle, essentially accepting that his life as a Jedi is over. Meanwhile, the Empire has been sending out a squad of elite wizards / assassins / government workers / goons called the Inquisitors to hunt down the remaining Jedi that weren't killed in Order 66. One of the Inquisitors in particular is especially hellbent on capturing and killing Obi-Wan in order to impress Darth Vader, despite no one really being sure if Obi-Wan is even alive or dead at this point. And in order to lure Obi-Wan out of hiding, the Inquisitor named Reva, or Reva, I'm not really actually sure, captures a young Princess Leia because her father used to work with Obi-Wan during the Clone Wars 10 years ago, hoping that this will compel Obi-Wan to come out of hiding and rescue the young girl. And this is basically the story. I think this is a really smart choice to keep the basic plot very simple. There's no stupid convoluted Star Wars nonsense that drives the plot, but rather it's very clear from the get-go what the conflict is and what's at stake. Little kid was captured by the evil dictator and someone has to go save her. One of the reasons the Boba Fett series failed for me so much was because I couldn't for the life of me fucking understand why anyone was doing anything at any given point, because the series and the basic plot was so murky and bogged down in the basic details really didn't feel compelling or engaging to watch. With this, we get it. Capturing children is bad and rescuing children is good, and everything else kind of falls into place around that basic plot, which allows more room for the creative details and things that make the Star Wars universe rich and exciting to fall into place around it without distracting from the basic story. I also really like the Inquisition component of the story in a lot of ways, just because it adds a really prevalent undercurrent of tension to the rest of the events in the series. We see so many times the Inquisitors just throwing around random people and interrogating them, looking for information about the Jedi. They execute people that they believe to be lying or hiding something, even if they don't know for sure that they are. You can often see so many people across the galaxy look scared out of their minds and always on edge, wondering who's going to be next, because the Inquisitors are truly intimidating and terrifying people. These are truly dark times in the Empire, and we see why. This establishes a nice tone for the rest of the series to further enhance the stakes of this rescue mission, and also lets us get a little bit of insight into what the hell is going on between episodes 3 and 4 in the rest of the galaxy. While the foundation of the series really does a lot of things correct, and I appreciated the fact that the Obi Wan series picked on a focused direction of the series and didn't get distracted from the main trajectory of the story. There are quite a few sequences of this series that really just felt mishandled, if you will. Like the writers just wanted things to progress to the next scene and didn't quite know how to get there, so they just made some shit up and hoped no one would notice. A lot of these things really relate to the absolutely fundamental components of the story, and if you can't really do a good job of clearly and effectively establishing this shit, how do you expect the rest of the story to make any damn sense? Let's start with the main conflict of the series, okay? Leia is captured by the Empire and Obi Wan needs to go save her. Wait a second. Why does that sound familiar to me?
Help me, Obi Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Okay, we'll get to that later. Like I said, it's a good rescue mission and it isn't a bad way to go. That said, the whole reason for why this rescue mission even needs to exist in the first place is one of the stupidest goddamn things I've ever heard in my entire life. So Reva captures Leia because she's looking in the Jedi archives or whatever and sees that Obi-Wan served with Bail Organa, Leia's adoptive father, 10 years ago during the Clone Wars. And because of this, she thinks that capturing Bail's daughter would be enough to lure Obi-Wan out of hiding. Okay. But what the fuck? Why? Why would you think that would work? It makes no logical sense whatsoever. Think about it. Reva's plan, based on the knowledge that is at her disposal at this point in time, is to capture Obi-Wan's co-worker's daughter from 10 years ago to compel him to come out of hiding. But in order for that plan to make any sense whatsoever and make anybody actually think that this would be a worthwhile endeavor, Reva would have to assume the following. Number 1, that Obi-Wan Kenobi isn't dead. Number 2, Bail Organa knows that Obi-Wan Kenobi isn't dead. Number 3, Bail Organa would know where Obi-Wan was hiding after not seeing him presumably for 10 years. Number 4, Bail Organa would risk contacting Obi-Wan and it's clearly dangerous to associate with Jedi at this point in time. Number 5, Obi-Wan would risk taking on the mission given how dangerous it is to be a Jedi at this point in time. And number 6, Bail Organa, a wealthy and powerful senator, would ever think to contact Obi-Wan Kenobi for help when he probably has several dozens of other resources and connections that would help him easily resolve the situation. And you might be thinking to yourself, Megan, stop yelling at me. What are you getting so upset about? The plan worked and Obi-Wan did go rescue Princess Leia. What's the problem? Well, yeah, Obi-Wan did go rescue Leia and Bail Organa did know that he was alive and how to contact him, but this is all because of information that Reva has no knowledge of at this point in time. Bail and Obi-Wan keep in touch because they are protecting the biological twin children of Anakin Skywalker, and it's in both of their best interests to keep themselves and each other safe as well as the children at all costs. Of course, when Bail reaches out to Obi-Wan, it would make sense for him to go help, but Reva doesn't know any of this. She doesn't know Luke and Leia are related to Obi-Wan, and in reality, the very fact that she captured Leia is one of the most insanely ironic things that's ever happened to anyone. But the only reason why it did work because the writers needed Obi-Wan to get the fuck off Tatooine and rescue Leia, and it's one of the only justifications for doing that. Logically speaking, no one should have even entertained that plan based on what they knew, because knowing what Reva knows at that point would have had absolutely zero chance of this plan working. In episode 3, Reva searches through an abandoned workshop where she's looking for Leia and Obi-Wan, and when she's walking around, she decides to move a bunch of furniture pushed up against a wall and finds a very discreet, very inconspicuous secret door that leads to a very secret hideout that again leads to a secret tunnel that Leia is using to meet up with a pilot to escape. How the fuck did she know that door was there? Did the Force tell her that the door was there? There's nothing out of place or a scratch mark on the ground that we could see that would lead us to assume that Reva is observant and that she would be able to figure out where this tunnel is other than knowledge that the writers of the show blessed her with. And by the time Leia, who has been traveling down this tunnel for some time now, makes it to the exit, the pilot she was supposed to rendezvous with is dead and Reva is there waiting to capture her. How the hell did Reva beat her? How did Reva know where the other side led? She didn't pass Leia because Leia would have seen her. She would have seen her in the tunnel and she probably would have run away or something. How did she figure out where the exit was? Was there anything in there that told her where the fucking exit was? How does she know where it was? Reva and her fellow Inquisitor goon get stabbed in the abdomen and just fucking recover after a few days or something. Literally, Reva kills, quote unquote, the Grand Inquisitor, and we think that he died only for him to come back in episode 5 with no other explanation of his survival other than
revenge does wonders for the will to live, don't you think?
Sorry, but what the fucking fuck? We've seen people literally die getting stabbed in the stomach with a lightsaber. This guy gets to live for a surprise twist, and then Reva gets stabbed after getting thrown around by Darth Vader, but the next day she's walking around and terrorizing moisture farmers like it was just a paper cut. I'm gonna talk about Reva as a character a little bit later, but for now I just want to know, how the hell did she think that it was a good idea to go and kill Luke specifically at the end of this series? She found a distorted message from Bail Organa to Obi-Wan talking about if he doesn't hear from Obi-Wan soon, he's gonna go to Tatooine and help Owen raise Luke, but nowhere in this message does it suggest any Force sensitivity on Luke's part, any relation to Leia, or any relation to Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader. So with this knowledge, she goes to Tatooine and decides to kill Luke? Why? She shouldn't have any reason to kill Luke at this point. She has no information indicating that he's a Jedi or that he's related to a Jedi. Killing him wouldn't do shit for her revenge plan because no one, including Darth Vader, knows that he's the son of Anakin Skywalker other than Bail Organa or Obi Wan Kenobi. Although the name kinda does give it away. Why didn't they change his name, especially when they sent him to live with Anakin's family? Whatever, we don't have time for this. So killing him wouldn't mean shit to Vader, even if she knew Luke was Anakin's son, which she doesn't know. This was supposed to be a dramatic conclusion to the series, but I didn't feel a single goddamn thing because the whole time I was screaming at the TV, like, why are you even trying to kill him? You have no reason to. I don't understand. So in episode 3, after lightsaber battling and beating the space snot out of Obi Wan Kenobi, which again we will talk about a little bit later, Darth Vader decides to throw some chemicals on the ground and light them all on fire, burning Obi-Wan alive and torturing him. Let me just say, first of all, that's kind of dope. That's kind of a dope move on Vader's part. What a way to fucking stick it to someone who left you for dead on a lava planet after cutting off your limbs. Tala, who is hiding behind a lump of sand about 50 yards away, shoots a blaster shot into the ground, reigniting the fire again, though somehow miraculously this time not killing Obi-Wan in the process. And even with Vader and his giant posse of stormtroopers, Tala manages to scurry down, pick up this injured man, and run off with him without anyone seeing anything or doing anything. Vader just kind of stares at the flames but doesn't even use the Force to put them out or send one of his expendable soldiers in to grab Obi-Wan. How the hell can this happen? It's almost like the writers realized at a certain point that Obi-Wan is their main character and yet he's getting burned alive in episode 3 and they didn't know what else to do to get him out of this situation other than have this really ridiculous escape plan, but in reality having a full army of trained stormtroopers as well as one of the most dangerous people in the galaxy would have clearly been able to figure this out. These are just a few of my examples and I really don't want to be that bitch here because I know writers aren't perfect and everything, but these are some pretty substantial plot beats that are thrown together without any logical reasoning whatsoever behind them. And as a result, when things happen, I don't really exactly feel what the show wants me to feel or expects me to feel because instead I'm just annoyed and distracted by how poorly everything is sequenced together. I also think there are some pacing issues with this show. The Obi Wan series really would have benefited from being a longer movie instead of a limited series. Granted, I think keeping it to 6 episodes was showing a little bit more constraint on Disney's part than we've seen in the past, but when you stick to one simple plot focus that drives the rest of the story, you run into a problem sometimes where you run out of things to do. In the Obi-Wan series, there were times where the story just basically repeated itself almost verbatim between episodes 1 through 3 and 4 through 6. Leia is captured twice, she's rescued by Obi-Wan twice, and then the rest of the allies being pursued by the Empire twice, and just as they're on the ropes and about to be captured by the Empire, Obi-Wan goes to confront Vader twice, only for Vader to narrowly miss capturing Obi-Wan twice. Almost like at some point the writers realized that it wrapped up the objective of the whole story, aka rescuing Leia, by like episode 3 and decided to just do it all again but with like modified circumstances to make it feel kind of different, which made the plot feel as a result a little bit, I don't know, meandering. Don't get me wrong, this is worlds better than some of the things the franchise has put out in recent memory, and this wasn't a crippling error that doomed the entire show as a whole, but I do think the story gets a little bit dull or a little bit too long at certain points, and it would have benefited enormously from tightening it down to a really good, really focused movie. I had zero expectations for any character development or character arcs of any kind in the series. Like I said in my trailer reaction video, I anticipated some decent Ewan McGregor acting performances, but really that's about it. And to my surprise, there was actually some really good character moments in the Obi-Wan series. It wasn't all perfect, and we're about to get into that too, but for the first time in a while, something in the Star Wars universe developed its characters and took time to create pretty decent character arcs without relying entirely on mere existence of a character that was popular from a prior film or show to carry the rest of the story. So let's start with the characters that we knew from prior films or installments in this franchise.
Hello there. Hello there. Hello there.
I don't really know how to feel about Obi-Wan. I mean, okay, that sounds kind of negative right off the bat. Let's start with the things that I liked. First of all, Ewan McGregor actually had some workable script to work with this time, and we actually saw him bring some believable emotions to his depiction of Obi Wan Kenobi. He wasn't saying weird catchphrases or droning on and on about stupid Jedi nonsense like he did in the prequels. And while it was not perfect, for the most part, the show did a really good job of delivering this, and we got to see Ewan McGregor's talent as an actor shine through as well. Obi-Wan at the beginning of this show is kind of in a pretty dark place. He's far more jaded, defeated, cynical, and reserved than he was in the prequels or even in the original trilogy, in large part because he feels tremendous guilt over what happened with Anakin. He even turns away from a fellow Force user that comes to him for help at the beginning of the first episode because he wants to protect himself and Luke by extension, and also because I really think he doesn't believe fighting is worth it anymore. Thinks him getting involved in anything is just going to make it worse, and that's kind of fucking sad. It makes total sense, and it was very impactful to see how he was really struggling with his past and his involvement with what Anakin became, and how the series progresses with him slowly accepting his past and moving forward. I also love the moment when it was revealed to Obi-Wan that Anakin is actually alive and has become Darth Vader, and how that really fucks up Obi-Wan's feelings on everything as a result. But at the same time, as much as I will probably be crucified for saying this, I really don't know if Obi-Wan is that interesting of a character. Let me explain. Okay, I mean, yeah, I love Obi-Wan, and I think he's a very important person in this story, and he's a clearly iconic character in his own right, but he's also kind of like blah? I don't know, he isn't quite as dynamic or engaging as perhaps another character could be. He's basically a celibate monk with a space sword that mopes around about lighting his former apprentice on fire and leaving him for dead. Ewan McGregor did a great job on the show, and the show did try to give him some dimension and some depth to his character, but it's just that I think that's just who Obi-Wan is. He's a wise teacher to our hero. He's not meant to be in the spotlight to this extent, in my opinion. And I know he has a big part in the Clone Wars series and the animated series, and that might make people feel differently or see him in a more dynamic light. I'm just going off of what I see in the film canon. Overall, compared to what we saw in the prequels, this version of Ewan McGregor's Obi Wan Kenobi is far better, far more fleshed out, and I was pleasantly surprised with his direction and his arc throughout the series.
You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
If you told me before I watched the show that I would say what I'm about to say about Darth Vader after watching this show, I would not believe you. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Darth Vader had the best character arc in the entire series. At this point, I don't even think it was capable for Star Wars to use Vader as anything other than a prop and a person who holds a lightsaber. But somehow this version of Darth Vader had some really interesting character development and depiction that I was not expecting, but I was really excited to see. They showed Vader as being this out-of-control, emotional, irate lunatic that throws people around and randomly chokes them for literally no reason whatsoever. He's also impulsive and irrational and makes decisions purely on emotion and not based on any sort of logic. So when I'm watching this at first, I'm thinking, wow, this is really weird, because Vader in the original trilogy was evil, yes, and violent, yes, but it was always under this cool composure that he had about him. He's not opposed to killing people, obviously, but he would do it for more of a strategic purpose and would never really let you see the emotional side of him. Hell, we were led to believe those human emotions didn't even exist anymore because Vader was this faceless, evil, robot-looking man. As the show progressed, I kind of like this take on Darth Vader, because it's showing us this perspective of Anakin technically being in the Vader suit, but still acting like that same passionate, emotional, irrationally angry, and maniacal lunatic that we know from the prequels. And as a result, Vader's inability to control his emotions has made him have a lot of critical mistakes throughout the series. Vader also has this really great scene where Obi-Wan damages his mask, and we see part of Anakin's damaged body beneath the armor, and he absolves Obi-Wan of his guilt by telling him that Obi-Wan didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, Vader did. I always interpreted Vader's helmet and armor as being symbolic of his loss of the former human self before joining the Sith, and that any bits of his humanity were also dissolved along with it. When he decides to save Luke from the Emperor at the end of Return of the Jedi, and Luke removes Vader's mask, it's symbolic of the fact that Vader's returned humanity has come to him before he dies. Seeing this fractured helmet seemed to be symbolic to me that Anakin/Darth Vader is kind of having this struggle between, on the one hand, being the cold, emotionless, and ruthless executioner of the Empire, and at the same time still having those moments of intense emotions of anger and hatred that Anakin still feels about his past.
You don't have to call me that. I'm just Leia.
I honestly did not expect to see a young Princess Leia in this show, like, at all. I mean, it really is kind of a risk to cast an iconic character with someone new depicting a younger or older version of them, as we've seen from Star Wars in the past. So to see Leia take on a full-fledged starring role in this show and not have it be played by Carrie Fisher kind of shocked me. But as the show progressed, it became clear to me that this was kind of one of the only options that the writers could have to give a good enough reason to have Obi-Wan not stay on Tatooine the entire series. As a character herself, I think the actress who played her was really charismatic. I liked little Leia. She was spunky, she was smart, she was not going to take any shit from anybody. Some moments, however, I felt were a little bit too cutesy, a little bit too campy. That said, I thought Leia's arc of growing to understand the world around her and resolving to help it at the end of the series was a nice and believable character story for her, and I could believe that this performance and depiction would be the same person that would later become the Princess Leia that we know from the original movies. So I guess that's all you can really ask for at the end of the day.
Thank you, Owen. Didn't do it for you.
Owen and Beru are my favorite people in this whole fucking show. I love that Owen was just absolutely not taking any of Obi-Wan's shit and was openly roasting him for training someone that slaughtered an entire population of people. I also love that Beru's first reaction to hearing that a trained assassin was coming to kill Luke was pulling a bunch of guns out of the wall and basically was like, yeah, okay, we're gonna kill this bitch if it's the last thing that I do. And ultimately, the main takeaway is that they love Luke and will protect him at all costs. Alright, now let's talk about the new characters.
I don't need anyone.
Alright, let's talk about Reva. I really wanted to like Reva. I'm gonna probably use them interchangeably, so just bear with me here. I really wanted to like her, I really did. And in episode 1, I almost really liked her. I really love that scene where she's interrogating everyone on Tatooine at the beginning of the first episode, and she's openly threatening Owen for information about the Jedi because it felt really intense.
You think you could protect them from me?
They also hint early on to the fact that Reva comes from a different background and that she seems to have her own agenda, which makes for a decent intrigue into her character and her motivations. That being said, and I can't tell if this is the writing or the acting performance, but Reva was just way too over the top for me. She was just so freaking angry at all times.
Child and an old man, was it worth it? He will find you! Send out the probes. Do it now. Can't wait, Obi-Wan!
And even if she's kind of an intense person in general, this felt way too heavy-handed for me. It read as very one-note in her performance and just who her character was, at least at the beginning, and sometimes it felt a little bit cartoonish. There were a few moments where her acting was much better when she was more controlled and reserved, and you still see that intensity, but it's not her screaming at somebody, and I thought those were really great. But then 5 minutes later, she'd be yelling and screaming at somebody for no reason. By the time episode 5 rolled around and we get to see some more of Reva's backstory and motivations, I felt far more invested in this character. And Reva is revealed to be a youngling who survived Order 66 and wants to get revenge on Vader for slaughtering her entire surrogate family of younglings, and is also someone who despises Obi Wan Kenobi because she felt he could have done more to help. This really helped me give some dimension for Reva, and when she apparently got killed by Vader in episode 5, I was kind of bummed initially because I wanted to see her arc fully resolved. By the time episode 6 rolled around, it was kind of fucked up for me again. I mean, we already talked about how it made no sense whatsoever for Reva to go to Tatooine looking for Luke in the first place, but even beyond that, it seems really weird that Reva would be motivated to kill Luke, a fellow child, when her whole point of seeking revenge on Vader was for the young children that he also slaughtered. Even for as angry as she is, it makes literally no sense whatsoever that this would be her motivation to exact revenge. It just seems backwards as hell to me. She has this moment of realization and redemption by not killing Luke. It didn't really feel earned for me. It was supposed to be this emotional thing and I didn't care. I was like, yeah, no shit, you shouldn't kill this kid. You have no reason to whatsoever. I do think the actress did her best with the role and it had a lot of potential. It just came down to the fact that the writing could have been better, and I think that's kind of unfortunate, especially for a starring character that's new and that we haven't seen before.
And you are?
I am the lead security on this level.
Then I'm your commanding officer, and you will address me as sir.
Even though I pegged Tala to die immediately after she was introduced, as I'm sure many people have purely from the fact that we haven't seen her before, I really like her part in this series. I like the backstory that they gave her and how it kind of parallels some of the stories of people we've seen before who fought on the side of the Empire at first for one reason or another and instead sought a different path. She also serves as a nice contrast to Obi-Wan, who is also struggling with decisions that he made in his journey in the past and cannot seem to let them go. I do think the way Tala died was kind of bullshit. Like, I know she kind of had to die for the sake of continuity, but her wound also looked kind of weak to me. I mean, the Grand Inquisitor and Reva were stabbed in the stomach and walked it off like 12 hours later, so it seemed kind of like she could have limped away and still thrown the bomb to kill everyone, but, you know, whatever.
So judgmental.
Kamal. I don't remember his name, so I'm literally not going to look it up, but I know that's what the actor's first name is. So as an actor, I really like Kumal. I thought the writing for his character was kind of weird in this show. I don't know. It seemed like he was very clearly pegged as be a comic relief character, but he was written so differently than everyone else that it just felt a little distracting. I mean, everyone else in the show was so emotionless and stoic and serious, and then Kumal's talking like you or I would in the 21st century on Earth, and it just felt like it didn't really mesh that well with the rest of the tone of the series. I really didn't expect the show to have any consistent themes or any coherent overarching messages to ascertain from it. I mean, if you look at the Book of Boba Fett, there was literally no purpose whatsoever in making that show, and not a single coherent theme to be had other than make Disney money. But after watching the Obi-Wan series, I was actually surprised to see that this show manages to construct a pretty consistent theme for its characters throughout the series, and it's also one that we've seen revisited many times throughout the Star Wars franchise. Almost every character in this series has demons from their past. They have previous life events that haunt them and prevent them from moving forward in life. Obi-Wan essentially abandons his moral code and doesn't want to help anyone because of what happened with Anakin, and he's overwhelmed with guilt. Vader is so obsessed with finding Obi-Wan that he can't focus on anything else. Reva is hellbent on revenge for what happened with her fellow younglings. Tala feels guilty for her involvement with the Empire and the terrible things she was forced to do while serving them. Everyone is dealing with shit. But as the story progresses, our characters all figure out their own way to resolve their own personal demons and put the past behind them to move forward. Obi-Wan comes to terms with the fact that he didn't create Darth Vader, and a large part of the blame should be allocated to Anakin himself. Tala sacrifices herself to save her friends and Obi-Wan, thus making up for all the things she had to do while serving under the Empire. Vader recommits himself to the Emperor and forgets about Obi-Wan, I guess, but again, we'll talk about that later. Reva decides not to slaughter Luke, a decision that should have been much easier for her if logic was prevailing at any point in the decision-making process. Letting go of the past and accepting her mistakes and moving forward is a theme that we see nearly every single prominent character have to overcome in some way, and I think it was really executed well in this series. Let's talk about the stunts. The stunts were interesting. On the one hand, I think it worked in certain scenes where the stunts looked kind of half-assed because Obi-Wan was clearly being overpowered by Vader, like in episode 3 when they were fighting for the first time. In other scenes, the stunts kind of felt awkward and rehearsed to me, which I wasn't really expecting that. There were also a few chase scenes where the stunts were clearly choreographed in a way where it was supposed to further the plot and not let the people whose job it is to capture other people catch up to the children too quickly, but as a result, the stunts looked absolutely ridiculous. I get they need to make action sequences fit the story, and they sometimes have to kind of finagle with things to make it look okay and make it make sense, but they ended up looking really fucking silly, and it kind of looked like a child's cartoon series or something. Like, it just looked really dumb. Okay, so I will give Disney's Star Wars era some credit. This show is not entirely shot in front of a blue screen where the actors are totally unaware of their surroundings. That being said, the sets were interesting. At one point, Leia and Obi-Wan were walking around in what looked like a dirt road in the middle of Iowa, and at another point, Obi-Wan and Leia were panicking about how to open some gate. They could very clearly walk around it without any trouble whatsoever. I hate saying shit like this because I know there's some fantastic set designers that pour their heart and soul into making the most creative and amazing looking thing, but Disney has been making it a fucking point, not just with Star Wars but with the Marvel shows as well, to create these television shows that have quality of a motion picture film just because they have so much money to throw at it. If they want this to look like a movie, they're gonna have to shell up money that we know Disney has to make it look a little better. I really cannot think of any time except in one particular television series where Star Wars missed the mark on the score. Obi-Wan's opening theme was very subtle, yet harkened back to the classic Star Wars, and at times the score weaved in and out of familiar themes from John Williams' arrangements such as Leia's theme or the Imperial March. It was all done in a way that enhanced the finished product. Let me just first say that I fully understand that people weigh the importance of following continuity in a film franchise differently than other people might. A lot of times it really depends on the situation and how badly it breaks the overall story. There are some people that believe that canon is like the word of God and that breaking from what's already been established is like the ultimate sin in life. Then there's the other people that don't give a fuck as long as it's entertaining. But I land somewhere in between these two methodologies where I think on the one hand, if you're going to tell a story within a larger story, you should at least go to the trouble of making sure the big stuff matches up. But at the same time, if you're going to overanalyze every salient detail about something, you're pretty much going to set yourself up to drive yourself insane when it inevitably isn't perfect. So let's just keep that in mind going forward. Okay, so after watching the Obi-Wan series, I have a lot of, let's just call them questions. I don't want to call them continuity errors or retconning or discrepancies or anything like that just yet, because I know Star Wars fans online are just knocking themselves the fuck out trying to prove to people that the continuity is still perfect and the story is just one big fantastic epic tale. But I want to just go through some of my questions and see if we can figure out a plausible explanation that would make the show fit in line with the rest of the Star Wars universe. Obi-Wan and Leia went on this absolutely insane, life-threatening, life-changing adventure where Leia was 10 years old, an impressionable child, and yet when she reaches out to Obi-Wan in A New Hope, she introduces herself as the daughter of the person with whom Obi-Wan served in the Clone Wars 10 years ago. You would think she wouldn't have had to say that, right? Like, she could have just been like, yeah, hi, remember when you saved me for some really crazy lady a few years ago when I was kidnapped by the Empire? Later on in A New Hope, when Obi-Wan sacrifices himself to save Leia from the Empire again, she kind of just drapes a blanket over Luke when he's sad and very kindly reminds him to get the fuck over it. The show suggests a solution to this question, by having Obi-Wan tell Leia at the end of the 6th episode that their lives will be in danger if they ever talk about this mission to anyone ever again. And I'm just kind of like, Okay, sure. If you're going forward, you guys should probably stay away from each other, just, to keep a low profile, like you said, Obi-Wan. But it's not a fucking secret that you guys were seen together many times by the whole Empire 10 years ago, so what's the point in lying about that particular mission now? It wouldn't put Leia in any more danger to pretend that it didn't happen, because everyone already knows it happened. Essentially, by going to rescue Leia in the Obi-Wan series, it confirmed that Leia and Obi-Wan have some sort of indirect connection at the very least, so acting like they never met still wouldn't make any sense. But all right, you know what? This is just one error, right? Like, I'm not trying to be a nitpicky bitch here. Like I said, I'm just trying to ask some questions. So maybe we can overlook just this one and see if the other ones kind of make a little bit more sense. In A New Hope, Vader says to Obi-Wan,
"When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master."
Which heavily implies that the last time Obi-Wan saw Anakin was when he was a student, aka before he became Darth Vader and became a Sith Lord. So why would he say that if they fought twice and talked several times in between the last time that he was a student, aka on Mustafar and in A New Hope? Apparently when Vader says this line in A New Hope, he is now speaking figuratively. He was the figurative learner because he was still acting like an idiot and like a student in the Obi-Wan series, and that he's grown a lot since then, so he's no longer officially a student. And I'm like, maybe? I mean, does Vader really talk figuratively about himself like that? Would he even dare to admit that he was wrong or that he faltered in anything having to do with Obi-Wan at that point? He's so out of his mind angry at Obi-Wan, he would never, ever admit that he had any wrongdoing or any error in his beliefs or decisions when dealing with Obi-Wan and exacting revenge on him. He would never admit that he was still a student. He even said that Anakin Skywalker is dead and that Darth Vader killed him, so that basically, in my mind, ends their training and ends the view that he is Obi-Wan's student when he put on the Darth Vader helmet. So it seems weird that he would say that. But okay. Obi-Wan did hit Vader on the head with a lot of rocks at the end of the 6th episode, so maybe he's just got like a long-term head injury, doesn't really remember, has a little bit of a foggy brain when it comes to things like that, so maybe he just like doesn't remember anything that happened in the Obi-Wan series. Maybe we should just let this one go too. So Vader's like a fucking lunatic in this series, right? He is out of his mind angry at all times, and he's only focused on killing Obi-Wan. He has made some of the dumbest decisions that a human being can possibly make in order to pursue Obi-Wan. So when presented with an opportunity to kill Obi-Wan, Darth Vader first tortures Obi-Wan, which is fine, but then when Tala does some bullshit that we've already talked about, and there's a medium-sized wall of fire separating between Vader and Obi-Wan, Vader just kind of like fucking stands there. He doesn't try to grab Obi-Wan or pat the fire out with the giant mound of sand that's standing nearby, or even like use the Force to grab the woman who very obviously shot at him 5 seconds ago and who can only be hiding behind this very small incline nearby, or really anything. He just waits, and then Obi-Wan is fucking gone. Why didn't he do anything? For someone acting really fucking crazy before about capturing Obi Wan Kenobi, you seem like you really don't want to capture him. Seems like out of character for you. Seems like the only reason you're not doing anything is because the writers can't let Obi-Wan die right now, and they didn't know what else to do. But okay. Maybe the fire and the sand are triggering for Vader, and he just cannot bring himself to deal with either of them, so he would rather abandon his entire purpose of being there in the first place than fuck with sand or fire. Okay, sure. Okay, fine. Okay, listen, I get it, okay? I get it. Obi-Wan feels really bad that he turned Anakin into a giant evil cyborg Sith Lord. I understand. And I know in Revenge of the Sith, he walks away because he can't seem to either bring himself to either kill his apprentice outright or save him, and all of that's fine and dandy. However, Obi-Wan has had 10 years to reflect, and I know it's still a sensitive subject for him, and he's gained new information about Anakin being Darth Vader since then, but it makes no sense that he wouldn't kill Vader now. He even says something to the effect of, either way, one of us is going to die in the 6th episode before he goes to fight Darth Vader. So why didn't it? Why didn't it? This man is evil, and he even tells you there's basically no way of redeeming him because Anakin is dead, so why didn't you kill him? We all know the real reason is because Anakin cannot die, but it just seems really weird that you would even have Obi-Wan say that and know everything that's happened and then not fucking kill him. At the end of the Obi Wan Kenobi series, Vader is still focused on capturing Obi-Wan, and the Emperor says some passive-aggressive comment in passing, and then all of a sudden, bam, Vader decides to abandon his ambitions of killing his former master, and then, doesn't even think about him again for another 10 years? Why? Why wouldn't Vader continue to look for him? Did he think Obi-Wan was dead? Did he just magically get over whatever blinding rage he was feeling before about capturing Obi-Wan? Why hasn't anyone from the Empire gone after Obi-Wan at this point, since knowing that he was still alive? What the hell? No one would even be a bit curious about finding him at all after all this time, and they just assumed that he would die quietly and no one would notice? Y'all knew he was alive 10 years ago and made the active decision to not go after him or do anything to ensure that he was dead after that, and yet you're talking to Vader like he's fucking paranoid or something when he believes that Obi-Wan was alive.
He is here.
Obi Wan Kenobi. What makes you think so?
But you saw him alive, so why would you assume that he was dead now when you made the active decision to not kill him and you haven't seen him around since? Is the Empire arrogant enough to assume that Obi-Wan would just die and no one should bother to question it or go search for him just to make sure? Wouldn't Reva had said something to somebody that Obi-Wan Kenobi was seen on Tatooine in association with a moisture farm that happened to belong to the people that Anakin Skywalker was related to? How is no one checking this? Why didn't the Empire just like kill Leia and her entire family for being associated with Obi-Wan Kenobi? They were out there killing people left and right for just being suspected of being associated with a Jedi potentially, and the whole capturing Leia and having Obi-Wan rescue her was basically confirmation that Bill's family was associated with a Jedi somehow, because otherwise how would Obi-Wan have known to rescue Leia? Wouldn't the Empire still be prioritizing capturing the remaining Jedi even if they weren't fixated on capturing Obi-Wan specifically? Wouldn't they want to still pursue and kill all of the remaining Jedi other than Obi-Wan? And wouldn't they still want to capture and kill anyone that was associated with having any knowledge of any remaining Jedi? Wouldn't they prioritize Bail and Leia because they clearly were associated with a Jedi? Wouldn't they want to know why he was associated and how he all of a sudden miraculously had this Jedi come rescue his daughter? Why were there no consequences of this? Why did no one question that? Okay, so you get my point. And look, I understand it isn't always fun to dissect a show like this, mainly because for the Obi-Wan series, there were certain things that the show did really well and really couldn't have done if it didn't travel off the beaten path of the established Star Wars canon in the process. As for whether I think these are continuity errors in the Obi-Wan series, they are just that. They are direct contradictions in my mind to what we've already seen in the Star Wars canon. In a lot of cases, they're pretty massive ones too. And while I can excuse some of them some of the time, I think it's not just the fact that they exist, but the sheer volume of discrepancies that make it kind of annoying to me. I can excuse one or two here and there, but there's like a lot, ones that I haven't even talked about. There's several things that the show presents as a fact and then directly contradicts themselves, not only in this series, but also in the rest of the Star Wars universe as well. And they're all things that in my mind probably could have been written around or modified to make more sense and still have a similarly effective story as a result. And I know I'm not a producer or a script writer for a television show like this. It's really not that hard to make sense. It's really just not. And if it is hard to make sense, then don't write the fucking story. I could give a goddamn about the Star Wars canon because, to be honest with you, a lot of it is a bit of a dumpster fire at this point. But it just seems like all of this could have been avoided and it just wasn't, and that's what kind of bothers me. There are a lot of times where I think it can be fun to kind of include some Easter eggs and references to things that we already know and make a loyal fan base feel seen by the movie. But at the same time, Disney has this way of including references to prior Star Wars movies and content that kind of just makes my skin crawl. I don't really know why or how to describe it. I've been trying to unpack this with my therapist. It's just the way that certain things are referenced and the way someone says something that calls back to something that another person said before.
Hello there.
It's the way that certain props are revisited or included in the show that you probably shouldn't revisit, and yet there they are. There's ways where certain plot points and gimmicks of Star Wars are rehashed and recycled in a same lazy way over and over again. All of it just makes me randomly hostile for some reason. It's not like I don't appreciate the references when they're used properly and strategically. Similar to the continuity issues, it's more that the show and a lot of the Disney content lately has such a heavy hand, and that combined with all of the other issues, it makes more grating when you see it so often. I know I've said a lot about this series so far, okay? I'm losing my voice at this point. I'm struggling. I don't know how much longer I can go on. And I know I've said many times I didn't expect to like anything about the show, and I called it really fucking strange many times throughout this video. But in all honesty, the show is far from the worst thing that I've ever seen. In fact, it's probably close to the top 5 things this franchise has put out since its inception, and I really mean that. I really do. The reason why I call this show strange is really because of how it tries to redo or edit certain things about the Star Wars story timeline. The Obi-Wan series almost acts as a soft reboot or a redo of some of the things that happened at the end of episode 3 and certain things that happened throughout episode 4, and the way the show tries to accomplish this is perplexing. Let's talk about it. I feel like I didn't make any sense when I said that, so let's get into this. It's no secret that I really don't like the prequel films that much, okay? I will just say that. I mean, they're very entertaining to a certain extent, but they have very obvious flaws that make them fall very flat for me. One of the biggest issues with Revenge of the Sith, which I will acknowledge is by far the best prequel film by a long shot, is that the show tries to wrap itself up very quickly and a lot of things feel very rushed. rushed, all to just put everything in the perfect starting position and so that it can make sense for A New Hope to start, even though A New Hope takes place 20 years later. Everyone is placed into their starting positions, Leia on Alderaan, Vader looking on as the Death Star is built aside the Emperor, and Obi-Wan going into hiding. It's almost as if the characters just stay stagnant for 20 years until the new chapter picks up, or at least that's what Revenge of the Sith's conclusion kind of indicated. And sure, I guess I appreciate the attempt for the prequels to try to tie everything up into a neat bow, but that's simply not how people's lives work or a story works in reality. When the Obi-Wan series comes along and unravels the bow that Revenge of the Sith tries to tie on the prequel trilogy, it has to then essentially retie everything back up and reset everyone into new starting positions to transition into episode 4. So one of the emotional cruxes of Revenge of the Sith, I guess, was Anakin and Obi-Wan having this fight to the death on Mustafar, which resulted in Obi-Wan defeating Anakin but sparing his life. It was intended to be this big moment where Obi-Wan still shows care for his former student by not killing him, and then as a result he turns into Darth Vader. But in this show, we have to have another moment where these two confront each other once again, resolving to fight to the death, only for Obi-Wan to once again walk away and not make the decision to go back and kill Anakin. I know this show does a much better job of fleshing that moment out and fleshing out these emotions and the things that both characters are feeling in this moment, but it also kind of overrides that moment that Revenge of the Sith was supposed to have and replaces it with this one. And then by the end of this series, Vader is once again resolving to stand by the Emperor and serve as his faithful lapdog, and Obi-Wan resolves to watch after Luke and his family just as he did before when he was hiding on Tatooine at the end of Revenge of the Sith. It just seems like a little bit strange that we've already seen that, and this show kind of just re-puts them back into that same position as if none of it ever happened. The show also does a miniature redo of A New Hope as well, with Obi-Wan once again being called out of hiding to save Leia from a very secure, very dangerous Imperial base after being called to action to save her. It didn't really resonate with me until I started talking about this show with somebody that this is basically the exact same plot of A New Hope.
Help me, Obi Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
And yes, the show definitely does a lot of different things than what we've seen with A New Hope. Ultimately, the main crux and the main story is that Obi-Wan is capturing Leia again, because someone from Alderaan asked him to. This series also resets what we thought was a suspenseful first encounter between Obi-Wan and his former student in A New Hope by actually introducing that moment in this show twice. And while yes, this series does try to introduce some character stuff in those lightsaber battles, it does kind of erase or diminish the impact of the encounter when we first see them face off in A New Hope. Okay, that was a lot. I understand that. I know. After all of that analysis that I've done, all of the work I've put to putting this video together, and in the process basically having to watch the entire Obi-Wan series again, I have come to the conclusion that I still really don't know how I feel. On the one hand, I think there was a lot of things the show did right, the most notably being the character arcs and character development and acting performances that the show had to offer. I will say that while I do think this story is a lot better than a lot of what Star Wars has put out in recent memory, I do wonder whether or not it was necessary. Like, I mean, technically, yeah, none of this is necessary. Everything kind of feels a little inconsequential. Everyone just kind of starts in a certain position and then ends in that same position as if nothing happened in between. And I know that's just kind of an inevitable aspect of telling a part of the story that exists in a time where we know what happens before and after, but it just kind of makes everything feel like, okay, that was interesting, but so what? Don't really get that much of an insight enough into these characters to justify its existence. Like, yeah, it's entertaining and it's interesting, and oh, that's like a neat interpretation of what Darth Vader and Obi-Wan are feeling, but it's not so substantial and so groundbreaking and so earth-shattering that I think it justifies its existence. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments what you think of this video and what you think of the Obi-Wan series, and if you have any suggestions for things that you want me to talk about in the future, please let me know as well. In the meantime, I'm going to pay attention to my cat and not think about Star Wars for a little bit. Otherwise, she's going to murder me in my sleep, so bye!